Hello and welcome to the BCE Comics Pod. This is your weekly podcast where we read, rate, and review big collected edition comics. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
I am doing fairly well. I don't think I have anything worth talking about in our little chit-chat session here at the start. Just comics, and more comics, and I'm looking forward to reading even more.
I will say that I've been overspending lately on some things, and we'll talk about it a little bit halfway through. But getting things like the Extinction Agenda Omnibus, or the I think what kind of sucked me in is not only the Fanatical stuff, which is a separate pile, but I kind of caved with this blue and gold omnibus, like that 90s X-Men. And the volume 2 coming out where we don't have things collected in Epic collections. So I was able to get the Fatal Attractions Omni, the Extinction Agenda, Blue and Gold, and then in August, the Blue and Gold Volume 2, or the Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix Omni comes out. So the Epics need to start catching up in that domain.
Yeah, we're going to need to have a serious conversation soon about where we're going to go, because we have been following in the wake of Curtis Finley's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club with the X-Men. They're nearly wrapping up, I believe. We're on volume 17 with the Epic collection. This is the second part of Dissolution and Rebirth. Yeah, we're going to need to figure out where we go from here, Stojr, pretty soon. Do we keep going? Do we go back? Do we read some of those Omnis? I don't have them, but I can find ways, I suppose. But yeah, that's maybe a conversation off screen.
Yeah, no. There's a part of me that wants to go all the way up to AOA, Age of Apocalypse. We have some epics between now and then, but not all of them, obviously. Yeah, we'll figure that out, and we'll make some announcements and figure out what we do. Eventually, we'll do it. Whether we do it right now is the question.
Yeah. Yep. And we've got a bunch of other things in the works, because I've been doing a lot of editing with stuff and getting shorts, and we've been splitting up these episodes into one shots. We started the X-Men again following the reading club by just doing single issue episodes, and we've kind of decided, well, why not take these long form episodes and also cut them up into single issue episodes if you'd rather just watch those as they come out rather than this big long thing. Some people might prefer that. And I cut out all this extra stuff, this chit chat at the beginning. It's just the comics.
It's all about the content, as much content as we can churn through the factory. So.
Yep, using all parts of the buffalo. Shall we go ahead and get into this one? Because we only have a little bit left in the volume, and then we've got some things that come after the volume. So we left off with Uncanny X-Men number 260. This one is Uncanny X-Men number 261, Harrier's Hunt, written by Chris Claremont, pencils by Mark Silvestri, and inks by Dan Green. All right, so a group of mercenaries called the Harriers have been hired to kidnap Wolverine, which they succeed in doing. This forced Psylocke and Jubilee to put aside their differences and work together to get Wolverine back, which they also succeed in doing. And Wolverine succeeded in training his two new recruits since he hired the Harriers to begin with, because this whole thing was a ruse. He hired them to kidnap him so he could train Psylocke and Jubilee, etc., etc. Meanwhile, Forge and Banshee stop by the destroyed X-Mansion, and they happen to see Jean Grey arrive, and she gets kidnapped by a bunch of freaky-looking creatures. All right, Stojr, your thoughts on this one?
I mean, it seems like an interesting Wolverine issue, but I'm kind of over the fact that the X-Men are not, a team in these books, right? So, I don't really understand. I'm not even sure if I'll fully understand. We'll have to get through the whole story arc here with this villain at the X-Mansion. I'm not even fully understanding how the powers work and what this villain is and what's going on here. Other than, there's just weird stuff, and it's supposed to be almost like body dysmorphia, kind of what's that, Cronenberger type horror stuff like that. But yeah, the Wolverine Psylocke stuff just kind of feels like something that you'd see in a Wolverine book, and we have a Wolverine book, so there's no real need for a tryout for that. So I'd much rather see all of these people kind of connected in the one spot. I don't know who these Harriers are. It seems like this is their actual introduction.
Is it because wasn't there something that said that they had been around before? Maybe it is their introduction. Maybe I'm just making that up in my head.
I mean, what are they, like Nick Fury or something? I'm gonna check my official handbook of the Marvel Universe and see.
By the way, I think they might have been in Wolverine's actual book. They mention on page 310, the botch job you and Axe made of the Golden Triangle caper. I don't know who that was who says that. The big boss guy, Sergeant Hardcase or whatever. Yeah, so they've been in the Wolverine book before, I guess.
Right. So, yeah. So we've seen them over there. Kind of feel like they should stay over there. But otherwise, I mean, the issue's fine. It's nothing bad about it. It's just, I'm looking forward to bigger and better storylines, and this isn't it for me. What did you think?
I'm kind of with you in some ways. I think the story with Wolverine, Psylocke, and Jubilee was great. It does have some funny moments. Like Jubilee crying about, not actually crying, but whining about the type of food she's getting and so forth. That's fine. It also works at getting us past the Psylocke betrayal, at least as it's needed for Jubilee, so that's fine. The Forge and Banshee stuff feels like it's all over the place. Like, they were supposed to be going to Hollywood, right? Where we left off with them. They were going to Cairo, but then they saw this magazine with Dazzler, so they were supposed to go to Hollywood. Now they're in New York, and Banshee continues to complain that Moira isn't herself. And maybe I missed it, but I got the impression that he suggested they need to go back to Muir Island, but they're not going to. So, yeah, that subplot seems to be floundering at the moment, although as the volume goes on, that seems to be the more important subplot. Yeah, it's a lot's just a bit of a mess.
The X-Men seem to have a habit of, like, something's wrong with somebody, but we're just going to ignore the problem instead of dealing with it. Like, something's going on at Muir Island, so let's go to the other side of the world and go have adventures with other people.
Yeah. I also noted, I didn't write this in my notes, but I did a quick look. I think this is Mark Silvestri's last book. This is his last issue.
Okay.
He then moves on. We get a series of fill-ins in between artists and so forth before eventually landing on Jim Lee for a while.
Does he might do? There's an issue in here where there's it's like 3 pencilers doing the same issue, and I think he's one of the 3 or 4 pencilers.
What, continuing on? Or are you talking about Jim Lee?
No, I'm talking about Silvestri. I think there's an issue where it's Jim Lee, Silvestri, and someone else all doing the same issue. I forget what issue it is, but
maybe I just missed that.
Yeah, because we'll figure out when we get there. But there's an issue that I remember flipping through it and thinking to myself, oh, this page looks like Jim Lee. Oh, this page looks like Silvestri. Oh, this page looks like somebody else. And I got to the end, and it was like pencils by, and it had some name for the group. And in parentheses, it said Lee, Silvestri, and somebody else. Unless I'm misremembering.
Was that Homage Studios?
Yes, it might be. Yes.
Okay, we're going to get to that, and I don't think Silvestri was one of them.
Okay, so
maybe I'm misremembering, but...
Nope. I did check my official handbook of the Marvel Universe, another omnibus that I was able to pick up on the cheap from Fanaticals. Little plug that I have nothing to do with. And the Harriers are listed in there, and the Harriers have their first appearance in Wolverine number 5 for Hardcase Battle Axe 2 and Shotgun 1. But the rest of the Harriers debut in this issue here.
Got it. Okay, so we got a couple of them before, but not all of them. All right. Well, shall we move on?
Let's do it.
All right, so Uncanny X-Men number 262. This is Scary Monsters. Kieran Dwyer fills in as guest penciler, but again, Mark Silvestri's off the book now. Joseph Rubinstein is the guest inker. Now, Dwyer, his first gig at Marvel was penciling for Captain America during the time when John Walker became Captain America and Steve Rogers was simply the Captain. Dwyer did a lot of work back and forth between Marvel and DC, but his entry into comics was partly in thanks to his stepfather. His stepfather is John Byrne, or was John Byrne. John Byrne married Dwyer's mother when Dwyer was 13. Dwyer's mother and John Byrne would later divorce, though, so at least anyway, that relationship got another penciler into the comic sphere, at least for a while. Okay, Banshee and Forge managed to rescue Jean and the monsters that took her captive, but after regrouping in the X-Men's basement, the monsters are able to kidnap both Jean and Banshee again, I guess. Capture Jean again, but also capture Banshee for the first time. All right, so Forge now has to track them down, and once he does, they both seem to have changed, and that's the big reveal at the end. We have a couple of subplot check-ins in this as well. The Genosians have some leverage against the U.S. government to get to the return of Jennifer Ransom, and they plan on bringing forces on American soil to hunt down Jennifer and the X-Men. Colossus, not knowing who he is making a splash in the New York art world, but he seems to be he keeps seeing this haunting woman from a billboard and struggles to get her to speak with him. She's so beautiful and he really wants to talk to her, but she runs away whenever she sees him. All right, Stojr, your thoughts here.
I like the subplots that this issue kind of sets up. I think the attack on Frost Industries is going to have a much larger impact later on. And not in this volume, but the fact that that people are attacking Emma's and bringing her sort of into the lexicon a little bit in the background here is going to be important, right? So we haven't really talked about her in Uncanny X-Men for quite a while, but she obviously shows up in New Mutants with the alternate group of the Hellions.
I kept thinking in my mind the Marauders, but it's like, that's not right. It's not them. The Hellions.
So, with the Hellions there. So, but I don't know. Like, this just seems like an excuse to make just to do silly things and gross things. Like, we got now tentacled Jean Grey and mouthless, Sean. I'm not kind of feeling this storyline at all. What did you think of this?
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like anything happens. Like that reveal at the end there of the changes to Jean and Banshee. Okay, that's something that's happening, but rather it just is kind of a nothing. I do like that we're kind of pulling the X-Men back together, but I wonder how long this is going to get stretched out. And quasi spoiler, it will be stretched out at least through the end of this volume. The Genosian take on the U.S. Civil War, I thought, was an interesting twist that is often used by revisionist historians, that the war was about the sovereignty of the states, which it is, but that sovereignty was tested because of the issue of slavery. So really, you don't get one without the other. I mean, it's an argument you hear all these days anyway. The U.S. Civil War is about, the freedom and sovereignty of the states to enslave people, right? So it still boiled down to slavery. But as Valerie Cooper is often being treated as this conniving anti-mutant person within the government, it was good to see that she is not being painted as a completely amoral person, right? She still argues against this Genosian take on mutants and their subsequent enslavement by the Genosians, right? She even uses American history and the Dred Scott decision to make that argument. Is Dred Scott not a man, right? The Dred Scott decision was the U.S. Supreme Court said this guy who was an enslaved person in the South was taken into the North, into a free area, but he did not gain his freedom. Well, that's because he was considered property, and therefore the U.S. government cannot take a person's property. So he's not a man, he's not a human, he's property. And so her bringing that up and the injustice of that Supreme Court decision is, she's well versed in her American history and also of our morals in this country, that we've moved beyond this enslavement of human beings. We fought a civil war to stop it, right? And yet here the Genossians are trying to make the argument that it's okay to enslave these people because they're not people, right?
Yeah, it's a very
So
similar argument that the Genossians are trying to make here. I mean, we're gonna have Freedom Force, subplots in the rest of this volume, as obviously they were impacted negatively in this volume. I'm pausing because I'm trying to remember where the issue is. Did we already talk about that, or is that coming up?
we had Freedom Force help out on Muir Island and they got their butts kicked and two of them died. And
That's what
I
I'm
don't
talking about.
recall if they,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yes, we got that already.
we got that part. And so the concept here of sort of the petering out of Freedom Force and eventual restarting of X Factor, in the volume or two, where we'll get Cooper more involved in that. So again, these are all, if you know what the future lies, a lot of the pages in this book are setting up longer term subplots, and that's, I think, makes this more of an important issue versus this sort of monster of the week storyline that we got going on here.
Yeah. Now I do have a no prize award for this issue.
All right.
All right, so the Dream of the Fisherman's Wife Award is given to Chris Claremont for his numerous tentacled ladies. All right, first we had Selene, who you see on the left there. Now Jean Grey has tentacles. Callisto is going to get tentacles in the future in Extreme X-Men, which I think was like early mid 2000s. I don't know. Are there any other tentacled ladies that I'm missing here, Stojr?
Only that she might get it in Extreme, but she also has them in the Excalibur Volume 2 or Volume 3 or whatever. I think there was a mini series in between, so I think technically it's Volume 3. But when Excalibur,
Callisto?
yeah, it's Callisto and Magneto and Professor X in that book and some other people. Like it's them on Genosha after all of the new X-Men stuff happens. There's a second volume of Excalibur, and I remember Callisto had tentacles then. So
Okay, so I don't know exactly when that takes place, but either way, and I know my joke about the Dream of the Fisherman's Wife is not completely accurate. We're not talking about tentacled ladies, but if you know, you know already. Shall we move on?
let's do it.
Before I get myself in any more trouble. All right, Uncanny X-Men number 263, The Lower Depths. Bill Joska takes over on penciling duties. Now, Joska, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Jaaska. He got his start in the mid-'80s at a few independent publishers, most notably drawing the second series of John Sable. John Sable was a book started by Mike Grell, but Grell had nothing to do with the series that Joska helped draw. He then did some work with Marvel, including this and one other issue of X-Men, and he did a couple of books over at DC as well. All right, in this story, Forge, Jean Grey, and Banshee have to track down the Morlocks, specifically Mask, in order to restore their deformations and then escape from the Morlock tunnels. While down there, they discover Colossus and Callisto, whom Mask had turned into this beautiful woman that Colossus is pursuing, so that mystery is now solved. They're down there in the tunnels as well. They all succeed in breaking free, returning to the surface, and Forge succeeds in facing some past trauma. Stojr, your thoughts?
I guess Mask can create all of these things. Like he's the bad. Like there's no other Morlock involved in all this. Like so he's just sitting there, like for an hour and a half making 75 tentacles for Jean. Like he's gotta sculpt this like clay, from what I understand. So I'm not a big fan of the villain that we have here with Mask being the only person. I was expecting like another Morlock with some weird power, some Cronenberg Morlock to help attack things. I did think that Colossus kind of looking like metal, but not really metal, is my take on this, unless this is just the artist's interpretation of it. So he's not getting bigger as he transforms. He just kind of like his skin is just this sort of metallic color. It's interesting. It almost looks a little bit like the way Paul Smith drew him back when he was on the title almost 100 issues ago. I don't really understand the whole like making. Maybe I'm just dense and I just don't care about the storyline. But like, so he makes Callisto good looking, and that's punishment reasons. Like what?
Because Morlocks are supposed to be ugly and under the city streets because that's their society, right? Didn't we quasi talk about Skids and X Factor being weird because she was a good looking Morlock? Is that like that's somehow offensive to them? I don't remember.
We might have,
I really don't.
but like that's the like I it feels like they would like that's their dream. Like they would love to get out of there. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And all of this sort of like Forge flashback stuff, like I feel like we've already done that, so I don't care about Forge's backstory during Vietnam or whatever, whatever war he was in. Which with the Marvel sliding time scale will end up being like the war in Iran by the time like we get all the epics out. It'll have to slide into the mid 2020s. Um, and then like they just somehow make Mask change them all back because like they punched them in the
Yeah, I
face
missed
or
that.
something. Like
I don't remember.
there's a lot. It seems like a lot of work to change them back, and all they show is that they kind of knock him out, and then that's it. There's this little blob here where they say, he knew of Mask's capabilities, and just to be safe, made a true record of our genetic pattern template to restore us to normal. So, like, it's actually not Mask. It was somehow
Right.
Forge is smart enough to make a copy of their genetic patterns and then change them back to normal. That seems like a very like hand wavy explanation of like we're done with the tentacle storyline. Let's move on. I don't know. This does not work for me. What did you think?
Yeah, it's whatever. I didn't mind it, but at least we get Colossus back on the team, and but he and Callisto appearing in the Morlock tunnel seem to come out of nowhere. So whatever. Let's just move on, and that's kind of what I feel with a lot of this volume. Right? Let's just go.
Yeah.
All right. So in that vein, Uncanny X-Men number 264, Hot Pursuit. Mike Collins now fills in on pencils. Now, Collins is a UK artist who did a lot of work on 2000 AD and subsequently has had a regular gig drawing for the Doctor Who magazine. He started doing some work for North American comics in the late 80s and early 90s, with just 2 issues of X-Men being his work of note for Marvel. So this is one of those 2.
I like this cover, by the way. I think
Oh, yeah.
it's a really strong one.
He does a good beast. I like
Yeah.
that. All right, so the Genosians send a press gang to kidnap Forge, but also their outlaw citizens Jenny Ransom and Philip Moreau. This leads to dismantling X Factor's ship and infiltrating their headquarters, but Forge's ingenuity, with the help of police officer Jones, removes Wipeout, who was using his power to disable the ship. I should have said disable, not dismantle. All right, so with X Factor's ship back online, our X combo are able to defeat the Genosians, but rather than being turned over to the police, instead of the Genosian press gang being turned over to the police, the feds step in and they order that these Genosian attackers should be let free. Oh, you know what? I had a thought on that cover. I don't think that's a Collins cover. I think is that a Jim Lee?
It looks Jim Lee-esque, like as if it is Jim Lee. It's in the bottom right. It looks like maybe with I don't know who else is inking. Is that maybe Jay Lee? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what's under Jim Lee's name.
Maybe there's an inker Jim Lee works with quite a lot, who I think his name is Joe Scott or Joe Williams. I wonder if that's him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just kind of feel like this issue, like I feel like we got thrown into the deep end of the pool in this issue, and I was struggling with like what's going on. Like we just very quickly like we're in this whole thing with like Forge and this, now we introduce this new cop character who's now in an X-Men uniform. Um and there's no chance to like regroup or figure out why this is happening. Like I get like the plot device of like, throwing you into the middle of things and ramping up the tension or whatnot, but I kind of feel like it would have been a little better if we took a bit of a breath between the Morlock thing and this, even if it was just a couple pages, and then had the Genosians attack again. Otherwise it just kind of feels like random. Like it feels like we're just jumping around to different things. Um, I like having Beast back in the book, so big fan of that. It's a shame because I like a lot of these characters, but I feel like they're being underutilized, and it's kind of annoying. I should enjoy a Beast, Gene, you know, uh, and and Banshee book a lot more than I am. But we're overly focused on Forge, and I don't care about Forge. I feel like Forge is a background character, and unless we're gonna have some sort of love triangle with Storm, I don't care much about Forge.
See,
So
I like
yeah, go ahead.
Forge if he's creating things, if he's making
Yeah,
gadgets,
he's
right?
the
But
X-Men's cute,
yeah, but he's not really doing that.
right? Yeah, like he's
So
not a field person. Like even when he was like leading X Factor, like much later on, he was still creating gadgets. It was a little different, but I probably had similar complaints when I was reading that back in the 90s. So yeah, I just like I don't care much for this issue. And like why is so Colossus is still sticking around? Is that who we have here? Like with I guess
oh yeah, that is Colossus with the beautiful Callisto, and they're becoming an item, it seems to be, but he doesn't want to be an X-Man, he wants to be an artist. He doesn't remember who he is. Something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
like why is he there to begin with if he doesn't remember who he is? Maybe he was attacked earlier in the issue, or something like that. But like
They pulled him out of the Morlock tunnels,
yeah.
and then the Genosians were there to take Jenny Ransom and Philip Moreau, who were hanging out with Colossus and Callisto.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But that happened yeah.
That happened a couple issues ago,
Right.
but
So he was down in the Morlock tunnels last issue
that was
with
last issue.
Mask.
Yeah,
That like
yeah.
so that's the like I don't know. I feel like this could have all been fixed with just a couple pages, right? Like of have them all hanging out in the ship, have them all talking for a few minutes. Wow, that Mask was a real pain in the butt. I know we got a little bit of that at the very end of the last issue, but like get them all in the room and then have Forge go out for milk or something like that, and then have the attack happen. And I feel like there'd be a little bit more connective tissue. Otherwise, it just feels like we're throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. So,
Yeah.
your
No, I
thoughts?
agree. It's jumping around everywhere. We don't have a firm through thread of what the main story is. It just feels like a bunch of this and that all over the place. Um I do like Colin's art on this, even if he wasn't the cover artist. I do like his art here. He seems like a good fit. He's got some good details. Something that struck me though is on page 398, the one right before where you are, Stoger, that first panel there. Look at the size of X Factor's ship. All right. I knew it was supposed to be big, but I didn't know it was supposed to dwarf the Twin Towers. I mean, that is huge. And so it's no wonder that we had that statement at the start of the issue about it casting this shadow over the city. If I were a New Yorker, I'd be pissed about that too. That, the entire city is in this terrible shadow of that monstrous ship.
I'm not sure it's
Um,
really depicted that way in X Factor too. I feel like that just kind of tweaking
as
it
for the
here,
convenience of
but
this story,
yeah, but I mean, I could be wrong. But I I never got the sense from the things that I've read, and I haven't read them all, but the things that I've read that it seems that way. I do agree on the art, though. It seems like there's a school of artists around this time that are starting to find their footing. Whether that's Ron Lim, who was already doing Silver Surfer and Cap by this point. Steve Epting's going to start to come into play with an Avengers run soon. Mark Bagley and Collins here. Like they all come from a similar cloth, I think. Have a similar style. Like with this Colossus in the bottom right kind of reminds me a bit of Epting, and the next page gives me a little bit of a Mark Bagley vibe, and I think it's just the way that people's faces are drawn by these different artists. And I'm here for it all. I love all those artists. So
yeah. All right, shall we soldier on? All right, this is Uncanny X-Men number 265, Storm. Bill Joska returns on pencils. All right, now out in space, a duel involving the Shi'ar Empire is happening, but that's just a tease that might eventually lead somewhere. We don't know because it's not in this volume. Back on Earth, we get a check-in on the child Storm, who's been playing a modern-day Robin Hood. She's starting to learn about her weather patterns, or weather powers, and has been having some vague memories of the X-Men. But there are people who are after her. Nanny and the Widowmaker, who apparently are not dead either, they've revealed that they reverted Aurora back to being a child, and they're looking for her. And there's also the mysterious Shadow King, who seems to be able to take control of people's minds, including one Valerie Cooper this time. All right, Stoja, your thoughts on this one?
I'm done with Nanny and the Orphan Maker. Can we just like move on from these stupid characters?
Claremont's not done with them.
I know. So I think the dragon in the beginning, just to scroll back real quick, looks cool. But it also just feels like another thing that we're just throwing at the wall to see what sticks. Like it's completely unnecessary for at least this part of the story. I don't really get it. And then we're following Storm, who's reverted to a child, and it feels like my problem with this Storm storyline is twofold. One is I don't like the fact that we just got the X-Men back together at the end of Inferno just to kind of scatter them to the wind and have them all forget their memory just to bring them back again. Because I mean that's the ultimate goal whenever you do something like that, right? So they're not going to forever go their separate ways. You're going to slowly show them on their own and then have them team up again for some big bad at some point in time, right? That's TV or writing 101. But we've done this before with Storm a couple times, right? We've had her lose her powers and then eventually get them back. We've now reverted her to a child, and now we're going to eventually have her come back in theory, right? So it just kind of feels like we've done this already, and there also isn't any like rules or understanding of why she's a child, right? So what we've gotten so far is that you go through the Siege Perilous, and I know she didn't, but you go through the Siege Perilous and they seem to go somewhere and like lose their memories. And with Storm, we just have that Nanny and the Orphan Maker can magically make her a child again. Like there's no real explanation for it beyond that. So it's annoying. It's just it just feels like it's not new territory. It feels like we just wanted to show her as a kid and we're just trying this out. Maybe this is a way to get sort of younger X-Men in the book or something. I don't know what the reasoning behind this is, because it eventually goes away, as we all know, because people have read the comics past 1991, and she's not a child today. This is the first issue where the Shadow King starts to come into play for me as a menacing villain, right? What I like that he's able to control people. I like the confidence that he has. He seems kind of scary in this issue. You got Cooper kind of crying there while he talks, but the way that he's drawn confused me at first, because I was getting confused with the Russian spy person from the last issue with the eye patch, because they've been meeting with somebody else in
oh right, yeah, that person
Boleshki, or I forget his name, So at first I was like, well, wait a second. They weren't mind controlled in the last issue. What's going on here? Where's the guy's eye patch? Then I was like, oh wait, this is the cop guy that like, all right, never mind. I'm caught up here, right? So that makes a little bit more sense. I like that he has some proximity to these people to control them, but I kind of get the sense that, you know, he's controlling other people like remotely, which is weird. And I know it's a way to sort of show his powers, but seems a bit excessive for that. I don't understand the introduction of these Hound characters other than the imagery, right? So he's controlling these people, but he's not like he's not Ahab. He's not the person who eventually, you know, in the future, you know, has hounds. So why does he have hounds too? Like, I don't know. Just kind of throws me off. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I like that we have a check-in with Storm, but otherwise, this was a boring issue. As I kind of mentioned before, it seems like this whole book has just simply lost the plot, and we're just taking our sweet time to pull the X-Men back together again. And I don't know if that's maybe because Silvestri's what I assume is an abrupt leaving of the book, and that kind of threw things in a bit of turmoil. I don't know for a fact, but I've gotten the impression that Silvestri just kind of quits rather suddenly, and I could be wrong about that. But maybe that's because we're just trying to figure out a new collaborator for Claremont to figure out where to go from there. But it's boring. It's not great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why exactly he left, but like it kind of it gives me the sense that like like I don't know what my impression really was because I didn't really care too much about like Marvel politics and all the backroom stuff. Like I'm interested in it, but I never like followed it and took a side or anything like that. But if the eventual thing that we're gonna get to in a year or so, book publishing wise, is that Lee is basically gonna push Claremont out. Lee might have been right because like has Claremont written anything? Like, does he have any real direction here? And how much is Lee contributing to things that are going to be good that are coming up, right? Because it feels like Claremont's just going back to the well for all of these random things. And I'm not seeing a lot. The Genosha stuff's interesting. There's sort of a build up there, but I think they kind of are botching the Shadow King stuff. Maybe that'll have a better payoff in the next volume when we read like the actual confrontation, but like this build up for the Shadow King has been kind of sloppy, I think, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Yeah, I get you there. And I think at least if we're talking about Silvestri's leaving, I don't know if it has anything to do with his relationship with Claremont, but it could just be that we're at a time where a lot of creatives are getting more and more frustrated with how they're being compensated for their work, right? Because both DC and Marvel, you don't get rights to the characters that you draw or even create because it's work for hire, right? And this is what's leading to the creation of Image Comics, where creators will have full ownership of their work that gets published under the Image banner. So I think that's an element of what's happening here is we are getting a lot of these kind of big name artists and other creators who, people love their work, but they're leaving because they're not getting compensated well.
Yeah. And I mean, we are leading up to the Image, creation, but we're still a couple years away from that, a year or two away from that.
Yeah, but that frustration is simmering. It takes a little while, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, quasi-related then, let's get to Uncanny X-Men number 266. I say quasi-related because we have the introduction of a character who I believe was designed by Jim Lee, even though he doesn't draw this issue. This is Gambit. Mike Collins returns on pencils.
Great cover by Andy Kubert, though.
Is that a Kubert cover?
Yeah, Andy and Adam, brothers, whose legendary father, Joe Kubert, ran and started an artist school. So these are all legends in the industry. I'm a big fan of both Andy and Adam. And actually, I forget which one, but one of their daughters is also a penciler and artist. I follow her on TikTok, and she's done things like Scooby Doo and Marvel work and DC work and things like that. So but I can't remember if she's Adam's kid or Andy's kid. But regardless, there's a whole family
A
legacy
talented
there.
family.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so again, Gambit, Mike Collins on pencils. Storm is confronted by the Shadow King's hounds. These are people whose personalities he has manipulated to be evil and follow his commands. And I would assume this is a foreshadow of what Rachel Summers becomes in her future. But then again, we have an upcoming storyline that makes that different. So I don't know. We're throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, right? As Storm makes her escape, she's aided by a Cajun thief named Gambit, who can add explosive energy to projectiles and seems to be a rather smooth talker. He was there to steal some art from the mansion where this confrontation is taking place. So this is what will make this issue important, is really the introduction of the character Gambit. Although there is some controversy as to whether this is his first appearance. Gambit also appears in X-Men Annual number 14, which was mistakenly published 3 weeks earlier than it was supposed to be, and thus that came out before this issue comes out. So technically, X-Men Annual number 14 is Gambit's first appearance, but this is his first in continuity appearance. Like this story takes place first. As I mentioned before, both Chris Claremont and Jim Lee are credited with creating Gambit, although Lee did not draw this issue nor X-Men Annual number 14, but it could be that Lee just did the design and Collins got the assignment to draw the issue. Anyway, Gambit knows who Storm is, but Storm has no knowledge of him. The two are able to make their escape, and they exchange notes. And as this is happening, Valerie Cooper sneaks into the headquarters of Freedom Force in order to kill Mystique, as the Shadow King has required her to do. But Mystique knew that she was coming because of a note that Destiny had left behind for her. All right, Stojr, your thoughts?
Well, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, plug to justify my spending, has his first appearance listed as this issue and does not reference the annual, but the realities of publishing that you laid out there are still valid. I think the art in this issue is interesting. There are pages here that I feel like Collins and is in that sort of Bagley family, and I'm saying it that way as a way of looking back. Obviously, Collins was a bigger penciler, or is doing X-Men at this point, and Bagley's still starting out at this point. But sort of the way he draws this woman here on this last panel, but the way he draws Gambit is not that way, and it's very much the way Collins sort of draws things. There's some interesting choices here with how Gambit's powers work that they'll, I think, tweak. So you kind of see the energy coming out of him. It's green in this issue, which is not what it ends up being.
It's normally pink, right?
Yeah, it's more pink in the future. There's also in this issue and maybe in the next one too, it's also like alluded to the fact that he has like latent sort of psychic powers where he's able to like smooth talk people and sort of convince them to do things. So that's interesting. I like the subplot with Val Cooper and the Shadow King and Mystique, and sort of Destiny sort of leaving things behind, or giving Mystique information posthumously to protect her. I think that's a real smart. If you're gonna have a precog, you're gonna have things like that are gonna happen. Something else. Oh yeah, I like this idea of like Storm like is at this junkyard of airplanes is kind of weird, but whatever. Like I guess that exists somewhere. But I don't know that they would like pile them up on top of each other like this. Like like who's like where's the airplane dump truck that's just like dumping them on top of each other? Like, would they just be neatly placed next to each other? Like, I don't kind of get this idea, but
It's cool
it looks
looking.
cooler that way, I guess. So yeah, so otherwise, yeah, it's it's the introduction to Gambit. What did you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's not this great, amazing issue that you would kind of expect it to be for introducing who would become a very important and key character. This is key solely because of Gambit's first appearance. As you mentioned, I do like how I don't know if I say like. I find it interesting how his power set isn't quite established. As you mentioned, the latent, smooth talking powers, his kinetic energy is green instead of pink like we get later. Also interesting that he uses hooks, little hooks as projectiles instead of playing cards. Although the next time we see him, he's using playing cards instead. So I don't know if that was like a miscommunication between Collins and the original design, or if they just decided, nope, you know what, playing cards. Those you can carry a lot more of those. So it's just interesting to see this initial creation, and then kind of he quickly moves into the Gambit that we all kind of know. There had been a character called Gambit before that was never seen but mentioned that he was somehow involved with Mr. Sinister and the Marauders. We don't yet know if this Gambit and that one is one and the same, although I kind of recall reading somewhere that that was the initial intention, but they may have moved away from that. I really don't know, and we'll see if anything comes of that. I do think it's interesting that Stojr, if you could go back to the cover on the screen there. This is the first appearance of Gambit, and yet he has the honor of being depicted in the corner box. It's like they knew that this guy was going to become a character that would stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. I mean, he's definitely a cool character. I like him. I don't know that I like, I don't know that I would. I feel like he's cooler once he gets the playing cards, though. Like, I don't know that this issue would have hooked me, but maybe the next one is the one that would definitely be like, all right, this guy's. I got to come back for more. They do have to tweak some of this stuff. I was flipping through, trying to figure out some of this Hound stuff because it's bugging me, and my quick research is telling me that that Claremont had bigger plans for the Shadow King, but because by the time that the Muir Island saga, where the Shadow King big sort of confrontation happens in the next volume, he's already exiting the book, or about, he knows he's leaving or whatever. Things didn't really pan out the way that they intended to. So I think the idea here of, like, hinting at the Hounds having something to do with the Shadow King, because otherwise, we'll talk about it more with the annuals. Like, there's not really an explanation of how Ahab's able to, like, just mentally control these people and just bend them to his will. But if you insert the Shadow King into that, you got a very powerful psychic that's able to do that stuff. So
sure. All right, should we move on to the next one?
do it.
All right, so this is Uncanny X-Men number 267, Nanny. Art, this is the one you were referencing earlier, Stojr. This is by Homage Studios. Now, Homage Studios consists of Jim Lee, Wilch Portacio, and Scott Williams. Scott Williams was the guy I was trying to think of earlier. And God, Portacio, Wilche, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Or she, I don't know. I think it's a he. Okay, Homage Studios. This was started by Portacio and Williams, who were high school friends. They worked together, and they started to get some recognition by doing some projects for Marvel, such as The Punisher. Now, Portacio had an assignment inking a piece for Jim Lee, and realizing the benefit of them working together, Lee moved to San Diego to join Homage Studios. Marvel had a desperate assignment where they needed an X-Men issue completed in 14 days, and they asked Homage Studios if they could do it. And, well, naturally, these guys said, yeah, they'll do it. And they managed to complete this issue in just 9 days, with Lee providing the layouts, Portacio doing the renders, and Scott inking. I say this issue, I'm fairly certain it's this issue, but I don't have that 100% confirmed.
Flipping to the end. Yep. Homage
Well, I mean,
Studios.
it's Homage Studios, but is this the one issue? I think it is,
Oh,
but I
they
don't
did
know
it in
that
the
for
9
certain.
days, is what you're saying. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, my bad.
Um, anyway, the studio, Homage Studio, would soon add Joe Chiodo, and then they would add Mark Silvestri, who was tired of working alone in how the comics industry was working at the time. These guys would all begin working together, and then being tired of the lack of creator-owned spaces in the comics industry, they would set the stage for Image Comics. Now, Homage Studios would eventually become Wildstorm, and Silvestri would separate himself to form Top Cow, excuse me. But this is still part of the early phases that would form Image Comics, right? We're in that time period where the stage is getting set for that.
Yeah, and I'm not usually a big fan of different artists mixing in the same issue, but I think like these guys all have a similar family of style, although Lee and Portacio not as much. But definitely Scott Williams. I mean, I think Scott takes over adjectiveless X-Men or does fill-in issues when Lee starts to leave there. And you can almost not tell at first, like their styles are so close together when you look at like, I don't know, issue 8 of X-Men, adjectiveless X-Men or something like that. So
Well,
very close to each
the
other.
impression the impression I've gotten is that Scott Williams is the longtime inker for Lee. So that would kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Lee would have the breakdowns, and then you're mostly seeing Scott Williams work over Lee's pencils. And so a change in style is you're not going to notice it if most of what you're seeing is Williams inks anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I've never been the biggest Portacio fan. This I don't dislike this issue, but he's not he's not my go-to. I don't have this sort of uh reverence of his art from this era, especially as we get into like the coming of Bishop or things like that. But what did you think of his art before we get into the issue recap?
Um, for this issue, I enjoy it. I think it's perfectly fine. I'm not familiar with his other work. If he did the issue that introduced Bishop, I read that when I was a kid, and I don't remember it. And I'm looking forward to getting to read it again because it's been shoot. I'm an old man. It's been 30 years, maybe not quite 25 years, something like that. More than
Yeah, he's
25,
on the
30.
book. I don't remember. I think he does do the Bishop introduction issue, but I don't remember exactly what issue Bishop shows up in. But he's on the book around 281, where like he's the normal penciler. So as Adjectiveless X-Men kicks off, you get that sort of double sized like issue of 281 with I think I had like a fold out cover or something like that. But Portacio is the artist. So when there's split to like the blue and gold teams, he's the artist on the other team. For at least
Okay.
the first few issues, and then it kind of falters off, I think.
Gotcha. Well, I was reading at that time, but again, it was when I was a kid, and I don't think I was being that critical of the artwork at the time, unless there was something ridiculous.
Gotcha.
All right, well, let's get into this story. Storm and Gambit managed to escape the Shadows King and his hounds by flying a plane to New Orleans. During the flight, they're confronted by Nanny and the Orphan Maker, your favorite. And Storm has a memory of how she got here, that Nanny had created a decoy of both Storm and her ship, and using a latent control over Havoc, when Havoc was in one of Nanny's suits, she got Havoc to use just enough of his power to not harm them, but to hide her destruction of the decoys. And Nanny then reverted Storm's age to before Storm had her powers, before her powers manifested. Well, as Gambit and Storm arrive in New Orleans, the two become a pair of merry mutants, like Storm did before, stealing from thieves and returning to the poor or the rightful owners or what have you. Nanny eventually catches up and captures Gambit, leaving Storm to rescue him, and in the process, she unlocks all of her past memories as well. All right, Stojr, your thoughts here.
Like, what is that not critiquing your explanation, but what is this explanation of like what Nanny did? This is this is nonsense. Like, none of it makes any sense. None of it's like portrayed. Again, it feels like we just wanted to have a younger Storm. Why? Like, was Storm like an old maid that we needed to make her young? You know, we had her lose her memory. She's been in the background of some of these issues. Now we're introducing Gambit, and now we just basically get like fun size Storm. Like,
It seems like editorial came in and said maybe she should make a deal with the devil to make her young again and revitalize this character. Maybe that's a good idea.
it worked. It worked for Spider-Man. But
No, it did not.
there's literally a movie called Brand New Day coming out in a month.
That doesn't mean it's good.
The $1 billion that Marvel
go
will be making will, so I don't know. I'm fine with this. So, like, I'm fine because it moves the plot forward with Storm. I don't know why they're flying like a 747 and not some little prop plane. By the way, they're not really. There's just like a junkyard full of planes, and they're just gonna start up like a giant one as they fly to a different location. Which I didn't even realize they weren't in New Orleans at the time. Like, why? Like, what's the
Yeah, they're like in Mississippi or something like that. But you triggered a memory, Stojer. Wanting to fly a 747 instead of a little prop plane. Isn't that what got Zacharias Moussaoui on the FBI's list of like, wait a minute, this guy's trouble. He wants to fly a big plane, not a small one.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Did you have other thoughts? That's about all I got for this. It's just whatever.
I admittedly enjoyed this one more than the last issue. It is kind of neat to see the growing bond between Storm and Gambit, and thus setting up his eventual entry into the X-Men. So I do kind of like that. We get a plausible explanation for why Storm is still alive, and yet why the X-Men actually buried a body, right? They didn't bury a body, but they buried a SHIELD life model decoy, which I would think they could figure out that it was a machine after its death, right? So, but we get suspension of disbelief, I guess. They wanted to bring Storm back, whatever. Since I brought up corner boxes in the last issue, let's look at this one too, if you don't mind going back to the cover. In that corner box, we have floating heads of Psylocke, Wolverine, Forge, Jubilee, Storm, Banshee, and Gambit. So is this meant to be the newest iteration of the X-Men? Is that what we're for?
A team that will literally never be together. Maybe in the next volume, but all of the X-Men get together in Extinction Agenda. So unless this team gets together in the Muir Island saga, I don't think that we ever actually see this team.
Yeah,
we might. So it might be in the Muir Island saga, but that would be it.
Maybe since there is no team at the moment, maybe they're just struggling with what do we put in the corner box, right?
Yeah. We're all struggling, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up this volume and then get to our extra issues here. For bonus material in Epic Collection Volume 17, Dissolution Rebirth, we have 2 articles from Marvel Age. One is an interview with Jim Lee. The other is a scorecard for you to keep track of where the X-Men are at this time. And boy, is that appropriate. And maybe also a sign that this is not so good at the moment. We also have some Jim Lee character sketches and designs, a poster by Jim Lee, a trade paperback dressing, and some alternate covers. The sketches are interesting. Interestingly, the back cover of this volume, the back cover, that poster right there is what gives us the back cover of the volume. Typically in these epics, we get a cover from one of the books that makes up the back cover, but not in this case. We get that poster. And actually, it's not even the original poster that you have there, Stojer. It's the updated version that was used for the cover of the X-Men by Claremont and Lee omnibus. So we're reusing an omnibus cover for the back cover. But anyway.
It's just because this stuff's a mess. That's why.
Sure. Yeah. There's nothing else worth highlighting. Even the actual cover feels like it's a bit of a misleading thing.
Sunder takes up 40% of the cover, and he's in this volume for like 3 panels.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it was Sunder until I read that issue.
Right. Yeah, I was right there with you. I thought it was Guido. I thought it was Strong Guy.
Yeah. I always recognize that he was drawn weird, but I was like, well, that's the only logical person that it should be, especially since he shows up on Muir Island eventually. So anyway,
All right.
by the way, this is a gold covers. I remember I held one up before, but and it was talking about, so when they were doing second printings around this era, they would have these sort of gold background covers, which is why it bothered me that one cover of with the
Captain
Reavers.
America.
Well, the Captain America one bothered me because, well, yeah, it wasn't a second print, and because it like feels like it covered up Jim Lee's art. The version that's not gold looks a lot better, but there's the Reavers cover in this volume that has a gold background, so it looks like a second print cover, but it's not. So,
yeah. All right, should we give our final?
Let's do it.
All right, our final wrap up here. So this volume is admittedly a bit rough. It takes a while for the Reaver story to grow into something, but even then, we're jumping around from place to place, character to character, with no real consistency in either the story being told or the artwork. It seems just as Claremont begins finding a thread, he gets distracted by another character that he hasn't seen in a while, and he goes off to follow that character for a couple of issues. It's actually quite frustrating. But even that wouldn't be so bad if it weren't so boring. There are times when we get some interesting stories and things improve just to get diverted again. Now, as I looked at the scorecard that was in the bonus material, it occurred to me that if there was at least some kind of thread that connected these stories together, it would have been improved tremendously, right? Just have a page of Banshee and Forge looking into the whereabouts of the next X-Men that they're trying to find, and is thus the focus for that particular story, and this would seem like less of a jumbled mess. And it's a shame because we have some important introductions in this volume. Notably, our first take on the X-Men by Jim Lee, who will become the defining X-Men artist for a generation. We get the change of Psylocke into the barely clothed assassin. And then, of course, the introduction of Gambit. And we could even throw Jubilee into the mix as actually joining the fold of the X-Men now and, having her defined look, which she didn't have before. So anyway, given the ups and downs, I'm going to give this this volume a 6.5. It's not terrible, but it's not good by any means.
So I'm mostly in agreement. I'm going to be a little bit harder on it, in the sense that I have higher expectations of my X-Men books, and for me, I feel like I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed as I go through this. Um, I don't think that this volume has any sort of redeeming qualities. It teases the fact that Jim Lee's in the book and added to some of the art, but doesn't really deliver on that outside of the 2 or 3 issues that we get with the Acts of Vengeance storyline. Um, there seems to be no direction. It'd be one thing if you scattered the X-Men to the wind and then you went and collected them like Infinity Stones to bring them back together. There seems to be no motivation to do that. It drives me crazy that the X-Men just don't care about their friends when there's problems. So they realize they find Colossus and he lost his memory. Well, shouldn't that be like, oh crap, we got to go find everybody else, because what if they're in trouble? Like if they lost their memory and if Colossus was being attacked by, the Genosians, then maybe we should go check on Dazzler, and oh, we're going to completely forget about Longshot, and where's Havoc? And we should go check in on these people. No thoughts on that whatsoever. Hey, you got the people on Muir Island starting to act weird, so maybe we should go and focus on them and see what's going on. And there's no help there with that. So for me, I just didn't think that any of that was handled well. It just kind of was all over the place. And that's why I'm gonna just go with a 5.0. To me, this is just kind of middle of the road. It's not terrible. I'm gonna look at the scale of 1 to 10 and say 5's right in the middle. But I might might go with higher ratings for other volumes, but for me in this one, I'm just really disappointed that this is an X-Men book.
Yeah. All right. So we take that together. We're giving this a 5.75, and I think that is certainly fair. Um, did we rate this lower than Morbius?
I
I
hope
think we
not.
might have.
It's not worse than Morbius, but I'll
It's
revisit.
not, but
I'll revisit my Morbius rating.
yeah, we Morbius was early on in our rating here, and we're still working things out. So, all right. But to continue in the vein of reading the Claremont run, as we mentioned, we started following Curtis Finley's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, so we're just kind of following behind there. I think we're going to do a side quest. I don't know if they actually did all of these, but we have a crossover that happens through 4 different annual books. This is Days of Future Present. And these are not in Epic collections yet, but well, they are in some. They're not in the X-Men Epic collections, but stojr, talk us through where can we actually read these?
So you can get all of this in the Extinction Agenda Omni if you're going to go that route. It actually starts off with this storyline with the 4 annuals, or you can go and pick up New Mutants Volume 7 Cable, but this will skip the first part of the that crossover. It doesn't have the Fantastic Four issue. Admittedly, you're not missing much, but not much happens. But we'll talk about that in a second. The other place that you can go is Fantastic Four Epic number 20, Into the Time Stream, which has all 4 of the issues in there. Obviously, you're going to get more of the X-Men backup content. These are annuals. They usually have more than one storyline. In the X-Men volumes, this will only have the main story, and obviously have the backup stories for the Fantastic Four. So that's where you can find this.
Yeah, and I read it in that Fantastic Four Epic collection. The 4 annual issues that this is in are available on Marvel Unlimited, with the exception of X Factor. X Factor Annual number 5, as of right now, is not on Marvel Unlimited, so you do have to go to one of these published books in order to read all of this. All right, so let's start with part 1 here.
And I'm going to try. I didn't have the Marvel Unlimited prep, so I'm going to try and bring that up now.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do our introduction. If we can get it on, great. If we can't, it's no big deal. Okay, Fantastic Four Annual number 23, Days of Future Present Part 1, When Franklin Comes Marching Home. This is by Walt Simonson, Jackson Geese, and Jeff Isherwood. The FF's headquarters, Four Freedoms Plaza, has mysteriously reverted back to being the Baxter Building, complete with a 1960s-era Fantastic Four inhabiting it. After a brawl, the past FF defeat and capture the current FF, and after a Reed v. Reed discussion, an adult Franklin Richards appears. But Franklin is not all right. He disappears to the Powers House of Power Pack fame, and the illusion of the 60s Fantastic Four fades away. Eventually, the FF catch up with him. They're joined by Banshee and Forge, who also saw the adult Franklin, and they're off to find the adult Franklin who is heading towards X-Factor's ship. All right, your thoughts, Stojr?
I thought that it was cool to see the Fantastic Four fight their, younger selves. I think that if I was a Fantastic Four completionist, I can almost guarantee that it's a story that I've seen multiple times. I know that later on, at least, we get this in the Falco run, but I got to imagine it's not the first time that, there's been sort of time displaced X-Men fighting each other. It definitely opens up a mystery of like what's going on with the older Franklin. But I think like the art style in this kind of led me to be like a little bit confused as to like who's who, right? Like these 2 women look like the same person with just like different colored hair. And so one of them is supposed to be Megan and one of them is supposed to be Rachel, but doesn't really look like Rachel. And then
I think their word balloons get flopped at some point too.
That's what
they?
I was like fishing for. Is it on this page?
Yeah. I'm not sure because I don't have my physical volume near me, so I can't look.
the Power Pack kids look like a little weird. Like I like everybody's. I don't know. Everybody looks a little bit too beefy or something. Maybe like that maybe that's the problem. We're starting to get a little bit of that 90s art style creeping in. Where an artist did you who's the artist on this? Did you say?
It was Jackson Geese.
Yeah, so Jackson's done like Superman stuff and um wasn't ever somebody like wasn't my favorite, but also wasn't somebody that you know hated. But like I don't know, I just get the sense in this issue that um it's a little bit not my favorite. Let's just leave it at that. I was trying to find the word balloon mix up, but not seeing it here.
You know what I
Swore.
was thinking on as you're looking there is I was thinking on Geese's art. I do like it, but it feels weird for Power Pack because it's too realistic for Power Pack. I feel like Power Pack needs to be more cartoony for them to just make sense, or maybe I'm more accustomed to them being more kind of cartoony. I'm not sure who starts the art on Power Pack. Is it Simonson or is it someone else?
I never collected
It
power
doesn't.
packs. I don't remember. Yeah, the
It
word
doesn't really
balloon mix
matter.
up is right here, actually. So obviously, this is a blonde here. No, Megan, this is something I have to do. It's something else I have to do. Rachel, wait. Oh, Rachel's the redhead. So, but since they're drawn so
Yeah.
similarly, the inker sort of messed things up. I guess my biggest complaint with this issue, though, is that like not much happens, right? Like it's just a little brawl. This guy's introduced. We get sort of the connections between the X-Men, and that's about it. So what did you think?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, honestly. I think it starts off promising with having the FF confront the past FF. Although, to be honest, I don't understand how the past Fantastic Four can defeat the present Fantastic Four. You know, the present Fantastic Four has more experience, and Susan Storm has been upgraded dramatically by this point. They should be able to kick their past selves' butts. Um, but the art also, I think, doesn't flow real well at times. It looks nice, but the narrative part sometimes feels a bit janky. Um, and some of the explanation of things feels just a little off. For instance, how do Banshee and Forge know Franklin? Right? They just see him out of nowhere. How do they know him? Is it just because he's this famous kid of the Fantastic Four? We get an explanation from Franklin that they were his teacher, but obviously that hasn't happened yet, right? That's something that happens in the future, that he's presumably going to join the Charles Xavier school because Franklin's a mutant. We haven't seen that happen in the actual Fantastic Four comics yet, and maybe it will in the future. Who knows? But yeah, so it's just a little weird.
Well, we have not seen it happen in the Fantastic Four comics because they retconned that he's not a mutant anymore.
Wait, when did that happen?
That happened
No.
during the Dan Slott run. But I think it was
Oh, of
more. I
course.
think it was more of an editorial thing, though. I don't know
Oh,
that for sure, so I'm not going to defend Slot unnecessarily. But during the Krakoa era, there's an X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries, and they retcon it, and I don't understand why, other than I think it was an editorial thing. So
that is so stupid. I mean, the whole idea behind the X-Men being that, if your parents had some kind of exposure to radiation or whatever, you can't get more of a better setup for a mutant child than the Fantastic Four's child. That's
yeah,
that's
I
idiocy.
was not a fan
Okay.
of it. Not a fan.
All right, let's go to the next part in our story. New Mutants Annual number 6, The Once and Future Mutant. This is written by Louise Simonson, pencils by Terry Shoemaker and Chris Wozniak. Okay, something weird happened, and I'm not sure what. Because you'll note on the cover there, if you can go back to the cover, Stojr, it says, well, okay, maybe, yeah, this one, it says this is part 3 of 4. All right, Fantastic Four Annual number 23 was part 1 of this storyline. And it says at the end of Fantastic Four that it continues in X Factor Annual number 5. Well, the cover of X Factor Annual number 5 says that it takes place after the New Mutants Annual number 6, not the cover, but the splash page. Best I can figure out is that it had to do with the actual publishing date. These were not released in the correct order, but even that is all out of whack because the Fantastic Four Annual was released after both New Mutants and X Factor, and as we already mentioned before, Uncanny X-Men Annual was released 3 weeks early. So publishing this got all messed up, but somehow the covers and the order got messed up as well. So anyway, even though this says New Mutants, the New Mutants one says it's part 3, it is actually part 2.
And they have a bit of an explanation here on the first page.
So now that was not reprinted in the Fantastic Four epic, so I didn't see that first page.
That is in. It is definitely in the Omni.
Is that in the Omni?
And it's I thought it was in the New Mutants one, but that one I don't have within reach.
Well, that would make sense because the New Mutants volume is going to recreate the New Mutants as a whole, right?
Yep,
it's going to do the whole annual. But what was the explanation? You remember?
It's basically that the people got sick, people left. Like there's just like constant turnover with with the different people that were trying to pull these issues together, and it's just a calamity of of problems that came up all at the same time, so things just got messed up. So there's just miscommunications and all that stuff.
The story was cursed to begin with, right?
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think the story, the core of the story has a lot of potential, but the payoff is not here.
Okay, so adult Franklin Richards now goes to the X-Mansion where he was trained when he was younger, and like with the FF, he conjures the New Mutants of his time period who encounter and fight the New Mutants of today. Cable sees through it, though, and he gets the two sides to stop fighting. But when the Fantastic Four arrive, and really the Richards, Sue and Reed, and then also Banshee when they arrive, they're also accosted by hounds from the future, and the man who creates these hounds, a guy called Ahab. Well, adult Franklin runs away again, this time to the Museum of Natural History in New York, and once again he's attacked by hounds, Ahab, and now some Sentinels. Well, the New Mutants and the FF together protect Franklin, but adult Franklin realizes that what he has to do is suppress his own powers, which he does with the help of his younger self, young Franklin. All right, Stojr, your thoughts here.
I think like art-wise, like there's some things that like kind of confuse me. There's a lot of yellow on these pages in the beginning of this book as I flip back, or light greens. And at first I was a little unsure of like why did Franklin just make himself look like Doug Ramsey, and then you have Doug Ramsey kind of there, and just like a lot of just unnecessary confusion. I like the idea of sort of future New Mutants and sort of showing them, but I mean even on this panel, right, like one of these is supposed to be Doug, I guess this one, and one of them is supposed to be Franklin. They look very similar, right? Like, and we would have no way of knowing of like, well, Doug's the one with patches, and or the taller one's Franklin. Like, we just were introduced to these adult figures, very recently. I think that the idea of like the New Mutants fighting future selves is a storyline that happens with all these teenage groups. I think it's always interesting or fun. But, again, we're just kind of playing with time across these annuals, and that's about it. I was trying to flip through and see if Ahab was in my official handbook of the Marvel Universe Deluxe Edition. Or Master Edition, I should say. Apparently, there's a Deluxe Edition that's like a giant Omni, which also has different content. I didn't realize that, so I might have to seek out a third thing instead of just the Volume 2.
Because they did the handbook multiple different times and kept adding to it, right? And I don't really remember the difference between each of them, but I remember the handbook being a little bit of a mess. Like great in concept, but then they kept adding and adding and
I
adding.
I thought the Master Edition, this is my own headcanon, I thought the Master Edition was just the updated version of the original, and that the Master Edition gave you like the binder and stuff back in the day, and the loose pages. But apparently, somebody on Facebook Marketplace had the deluxe, which is a big thick Omni, and had the Master Editions, and they're like, no, it's different content. It's like it's all one thing. And then there's a 1989 update book. So there's like 4 books in total, but I only have 2. So I'm restricted. The reason I wanted to check the handbook, and I can Google it on the side, is I wanted to see if if this storyline is Ahab's first appearance, or if he's popping over up in Excalibur at all. So I'm not sure if he's made his he'll be a recurring character in Excalibur because Rachel's over there, and as well as a little bit more explanation of his origins and things like that. Although in this issue, we're sort of we're teased that, you know, Ahab looks a little bit like Cable. It's either this issue or the next issue, you know, due to the scar on the face. So again, we haven't really, you know, sussed out who Cable is, where did he come from. So we're going to play around with some sort of teases of the origin there. At this point in the storyline, 2 issues in of the 4, some of these problems. My biggest complaint with the storyline is we're just pulling the taffy. Like this, you know, I like the concept, but we're not going anywhere. It's just kind of messing around with things. What did you think?
Yeah, I think I'm right there because I do like this concept. All right. I like that we seem to be having a meaningful story that is connecting some of the elements of the dystopian future that Claremont and Byrne had covered so long ago with Days of Future Past. And you know, it makes sense that the Fantastic Four are being pulled in if we have Franklin Richards and so forth. And Franklin being the connecting thread kind of makes sense as well, because he's a little bit of an unknown quantity with his powers. He has these dream powers as this child, but that's also what manifests when the rest of his powers are suppressed, right? So the concept all seems good and interesting, but yeah, we don't quite know if this is going to lead to anything important or meaningful yet. So we're kind of treading water, right?
Yeah.
Stojr, I hate to do this in the middle of this run, but should we take a quick pause for a moment and then wrap up this story and then our last 2 X-Men?
We will pause for station identification. All right, we quick pause, very quick for our viewers because we just snapped away and snapped back in. But while we were away, I did look up, and this storyline is Ahab's introduction. So Fantastic Four Annual was the first time he was.
All right, there we go. I feel like we didn't identify our station.
This is the BCE Comics Pod on the BCE network.
Are we BCE or are we WBCE? Which side of the Mississippi are we on? I guess we're on the east side.
Yes, we are. We are on the east side of the Mississippi.
But my heart is on the west side of the Mississippi.
See? We balance out the country here.
Should we go to X Factor Annual number 5?
Yes, and this one we will not have on Marvel Unlimited, so we'll just have to stare at the cover.
Yep. All right, that's okay. So, X Factor Annual number 5, Act of Faith. We're not given credits for this issue, and it could be that is on that cover page, which would only be reproduced in the X Factor Epic. Maybe that's in your Omni, Stojr. I don't know. But I don't know what the credits are because they were not in the Fantastic Four Annual. I think this is Louise Simonson writing with John Bogdanova on art, but I'm not certain on that.
That is correct. Al Milgrom does the inking, John does the penciling, and Louise is the writer.
Okay.
And then there's a little joke why this annual takes place after the New Mutants Annual. Why is it on sale first? Go figure.
Okay, that sounds right. Okay, so as Reed and Sue of the Fantastic Four team up with the New Mutants and Banshee, the rest of the Fantastic Four and Forge go looking for Adult Franklin in another part of the city, and they come upon X Factor, whose ship has just vanished because Adult Franklin decided he wanted gone. Well, we get another team up, which is complicated by the arrival of Rachel Summers, aka the Phoenix, who is the future daughter of Scott and Jean of X Factor, and she was also in a relationship with Franklin Richards in the future. Well, Ahab and his hounds also attack, but the 2 teams are able to figure out where he's hiding his time machine that kept him in the present, and with destroying those, Ahab goes back to the future. Cue Huey Lewis in the news. But not all is well. Iceman and Archangel are injured, and as adult Franklin seems to be trying to recreate his timeline, he sees Christopher Nathan Summers, aka Cyclops' child with Madeline Pryor. He sees the Summers child and blips the kid out of existence. All right, your thoughts here, Stoger.
So, not a big fan of John's art. It feels like there's these like Superman artists that are over here in these annuals, but I'm not a big fan of their work in these books for whatever reason. I do like his beast in this book. I think like he draws like a hairy kind of feral looking beast, and I think that looks really cool. Big fan of that. But like the sort of last page where Cyclops is lamenting because his child got taken away just like looks really weird, and I get what it's trying to evoke, but just not my favorite art style. Even this cover is just kind of not great in my I think one, it's crowded. You don't need all of these sort of word balloons on top of things. There's just so much writing on top of the art, and I think the art itself is not the best. I do like sort of the Iceman and Human Torch team up stuff that we see in this issue. Like that's fun, little fire and ice type of things there. And it makes a lot of sense that Jean isn't just like straight up embracing the presence of Rachel. Like I think that just this concept of Rachel being in existence, and the pressure that Jean's feeling, and especially with Madeline's memories and the Nathan existing and all of this stuff, kind of makes a lot of sense. So I like some of the threads and some of the core that we have in this storyline, but I just don't think it needs to be 4 issues. And I'm happy that we're fighting the main villain and not just alternate versions of people. I'm glad we didn't get like a time travel version of X Factor in this book. But I'm looking forward to being over, and I think we're going to save the best for last.
Yeah, I think the overly dramatic emotions coming out of Jean and Rachel were a bit much, and then of course Cyclops just keeling over at the end, also a bit much. I to your point, I do appreciate the attempt to explore some of these difficult concepts, right? Like Jean feeling trapped that her future is preordained. It's a great idea to explore. It just feels like it's a little ham-fisted here. Maybe that's being handled better in the regular X Factor book, but here it just seems I don't know. It's overly dramatic. Otherwise, again, I do like where this is going. It's great that we're exploring this dystopian future, although as they've come back here to the present. And honestly, it's one of the things I like most about Marvel's treatment of Days of Future Past, at least as it's covered at this time. We don't have the endless splitting of timelines and multiverses yet. There's this one vision of the future that people are trying to prevent or are dealing with the consequences if of meddling with that future. It's interesting that they kind of keep it the same. That that we know that this is what's going to happen, and how do we stop it? So I enjoy that, but again, it's are we going to stick the landing here or not? I don't know.
Well, let's find out as we move on to the
Let's
next
find
issue.
out. Okay, Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14. You must remember this. Sorry, I can't help but pause every time I see that. As Time Goes By was the song that my wife and I danced with at our wedding because we didn't really have a song together. So we were like, oh, okay, it's Time Goes By. Why not? So, the A story, although I think we'll cover the B story as well because I think it's quasi-related here. But the A story is, you must remember this, written by Chris Claremont, art by Art Adams, inks by Bob Viacek, Al Milgram, Art Tibbert, and Steve Mankiewicz. So we get a bevy of inkers here.
And how lucky are we to get Art Adams in this book? I mean, like even like the cover page, he draws a bunch of people, on this table of contents page. The art in this issue is great.
Yeah, I kind of regret not going up to meet Art Adams at Heroes Con that happened a little while ago. I was surprised there was nobody at his table. I went by when I was near him, but I didn't have anything for him to sign. So I was like, what am I going to do? I guess I could just go up and say, hi, I love your stuff, but not enough to bring something for you to sign and give you money. But so I feel bad about that. But yeah, love his stuff. Okay. Rachel reunited with Franklin, and together they meet up with the FF and the X people to apologize for the chaos that adult Franklin has caused. But adult Franklin is still manipulating people, keeping his younger self comatose, and even kidnapping Christopher Nathan Summers. Well, Storm shows up at the X Mansion with Gambit, and her knowledge of the future that she had learned from Kitty Pryde earlier in the X Men's history. This informs her that Franklin Richards should be dead, and that this guy, who supposedly came to the past, must be an imposter, ignoring the fact that time travel means he could have just traveled from another time anyway. But whatever, we're going to gloss by that. So, Invisible Woman and Cyclops are turned into hounds by Ahab, who uses them to track down Franklin, but they can't seem to track down Rachel. We get a big brawl where Ahab decides to just go back to his future, but then leaves Invisible Woman and Cyclops stuck as hounds. So Rachel uses the Phoenix Force to restore them because Jean was able to do that to her sister once, as we learned all the way back in Bizarre Adventures number 27, which, boy, we covered that ages ago. In the end, it turns out that older Franklin isn't really there. He's just a manifestation of Franklin at the moment of his death, which was sent back to his younger self, who manifested him as one of his dream personas. Stojr, do we want to talk about the A story separate from the B story, or should I just soldier on with the B story?
Yeah, let's keep them separate because I think they're
Okay.
They're pretty separate stuff, if I remember correctly, right?
Okay, sure. So your thoughts on the A story here?
I think that art-wise, it sticks the landing. Like, this is the reason why I would ever go back and read this storyline. I think that the Jean and Phoenix stuff, while dramatic, makes sense to me about why there's this reluctance. And I mean, Jean in her book in X Factor is turned down Scott's proposal for marriage, so she's resisting this sort of destiny stuff. It's why she was off on her own with the X-Men in the Morlock tunnels and things like that. The idea that Franklin is powerful enough that at the moment of his death he kind of sends himself back in time and is a bit confused is interesting and makes sense, and I like that. I just felt like we played too much time playing with it, like over the course of 3 issues. Like and it doesn't have much of an impact in the sense that like this should be a very sad book in the sense that, like, you know, a version of our son is dying and like came back to us at the moment of his death, unless like what we're saying is that the dream personas means he's not real at all. Like I don't really get that part, but I'm going to assume that he is real and that he's able to send his consciousness back as a dream persona, but it's real. It's like him, you know, and it's that version of him. So, you know, and I like some of the callbacks like we have here on this last page with the sort of Shi'ar crystal and stuff like that. So I feel like this issue has enough that I would rate it the highest of the 4 issues. But story-wise, this overall thing is like a lot of lost potential. I think it could have been a lot better if it was a little bit tighter. I think if it's going to have that sort of Days of Future Past branding, it dropped the ball overall. But I like this issue the most out of all 4. What did you think?
Yeah, we're definitely twisting ourselves into a pretzel once again. But despite the unnecessary complexity, I did enjoy this part of the story more than the others. There's some weird little things like when Sue Storm becomes a hound. I like how her costume changes to have a cross out 4. It's a stupid little detail, but it's fun, you know. And I don't know where exactly in the book that happens, but it's just a weird little thing that happens. It's silly and that's fun. I think if I were to have a gripe, yeah, there it is on that last panel there. If I were to have a gripe, it is that we're not exploring more of what has happened with this future and these current characters. For one thing, we don't address future Christopher Nathan Summers and his adult self, and I don't want to give away any spoilers. And maybe Marvel creators hadn't really quite determined who Nathan Summers would be yet, and hence why that's not covered here. But honestly, part of the reason why I thought we should read all four parts of this is I thought they were going to do something with that, because I started reading just the X-Men one and realized that Nathan Summers had been kidnapped. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's important for the overarching story. But no, he's just taken by Franklin for a little bit and then returned again, and that's it. So I thought there was a lot more potential that could have been dealt with here than they actually did.
Yeah, and I think the tease with Cable is that Cable might be Ahab. I mean, that's the thing that they wanted to convey in this storyline. They have not
Yeah.
yet done the big reveal of Cable. I think that'll happen, after the after the next volume, because half of the next volume in the Epic collection is the Muir Island saga, and the other half is the X Factor issues with the final confrontation with Apocalypse. So, yeah, we'll be able to talk about that more after we do that read through.
All right. Well, let's talk about the B story then. The B story is called The Fundamental Things. Wolverine gives Jubilee a little history on the X-Men while they're in Madripoor, and in the midst of this talk, Rachel Summers and the adult Franklin Richards show up, and Wolverine is able to talk them out of something drastic that they were planning on doing. And that's all I have to say on that. Stojr?
I felt like I was reading a book, like the exposition in this backup story. I mean, look at these word balloons. I mean, it's
The X position.
dense. It is dense.
Yeah.
So I know all this, so I don't really care about it. I'm happy that it's in an annual because it's an opportunity to catch people up and things like that. I like the little flop in of like Rachel and Franklin though. I think that's well done. I just wish that I feel like it should have been integrated into the story somehow. I don't know how, but like maybe if we followed them for a couple pages and then we saw Wolverine show up, maybe in the X Factor annual, maybe like this would have made a little bit more sense and tied things together. Otherwise, it just feels like we're shoehorning this into the other storyline, for reasons, just to have them connected. But you don't have to have this. You could have the whole exposition heavy thing as a backup story and just leave that on its own, and then taken some of these pages out and then move them over to integrate them into whatever book makes the most sense in the beginning of this X-Men one or in the back of the last X Factor issue, and connected Wolverine to everything else, and that would have been fine. So
Yeah,
that's scary.
I that is scary. That one of the pinups that finishes out the annual, but yeah, I thought this B story was just going to be a history recap, because you need that at this time. But yeah, then having Rachel and Franklin show up, it just ruined that flow. And it's like, oh, this is actually connected to the earlier stuff. So why were we doing all the history recap? But yeah, weird decision, but whatever. It's fine.
When
So
does he
yeah,
get called Uncle Wolvie? Is that a power pack thing? Like, or is that a
what, by
alluding to the
Franklin?
future thing? Yeah. Is that
I
like,
don't know.
because
Because
like it's like
I'm
Rachel's making fun of Wolverine here by saying, "Take care, Uncle Wolvie," as if like that's something that she knows about because Franklin and her, but like she has jumbled memories and we've never experienced that before. So, and even when Wolverine's been in the Power Pack issues that at least we've read, I don't think Franklin's been in those, or if he was just a background character. Like, was he in Mutant Massacre? Like, I don't think so. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
he
don't think
could have
so. I don't
been,
remember.
maybe, but like, he wasn't in it in any way that like was like a standout star. If he was in the back of the pack, so to speak, then we wouldn't even have noticed. But it's just like weird. Like, it's like this thing of like her ribbing him a little bit for something, and I'm like, well, how do you even know that? Like, why is this the first time you're bringing it up? So anyway.
Yeah. All right. God. Yeah. Don't linger on that picture of Longshot. We don't need that. All right, should we go to Uncanny X-Men number 268? We've got to get 2 Uncanny X-Men issues in before we are prepared for our next epic collection.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so this is Madripoor Nights, written by Chris Claremont, pencils by Jim Lee, inks by Scott Williams, and we get a parallel adventure in time. On the one hand, in 1941, Wolverine and Captain America team up to rescue a young Natasha Romanoff from Baron von Strucker as the Nazis who plan on raising her as an assassin to take down Russia. Sorry, I tripped up because my notes, the autocorrect decided to change Baron von Strucker to Baron as Trucker. So, sure. Okay, so that's one of the stories. On the other story, we're in the present, and that same Natasha Romanoff, who is now the Black Widow, has arrived in Madripoor to surveil and gain intelligence on a meeting between the Fenris twins and the leader of the Hand assassins. Well, after Wolverine rescues her from an attack, he, Psylocke, and Jubilee join forces with the Black Widow to accomplish her mission, but unfortunately they fall for bait and switch, and it just comes of nothing. All right, your thoughts, Stojr?
I think this is an iconic issue. People seek it out. You get full-on Jim Lee art. You get a crossover with Captain America, solo story with Wolverine, Black Widow added to the mix. There's you can't rate this issue low based off of that criteria. From an X-Men story, like this is a Wolverine book. Like this is not an X-Men book, right? This is, yes, we have Jubilee and yes, we have Psylocke in here, but this is really a Wolverine team up issue, so to speak, and really belongs in his book. And we're just buying some time between now and the next crossover from an X-Men story perspective. But this story is that good that I'm fine with it, right? Like, again, it's that good in the sense that it's a complete one-off, right? Like, this feels like it should be, maybe an annual or something like that, right? And even then, I'd be disappointed with an X-Men annual with only showing like one main X-Men as the person in the book. But I think, whoops, I went too far. But the overall, I like what's in here. I like the art. I wish that from a continuity perspective, we would have kept more of this Wolverine and Natasha know each other as when she was younger. I'm sure that they revisited a little bit, but it feels like that's something that gets completely dropped in modern times. Like I can't think of in the last 25 years of any of the Wolverine as part of the Avengers or New Avengers of him running into Natasha where they've expressed or talked about their relationship and history. And I feel like they should have kept it. I guess I understand why it ages Natasha. And I think like at this time there was an idea that she has some Soviet things with the Black Widow program, so she's a bit older than she seems. But otherwise, like I can't think of why they sort of dropped this this kind of storyline. But I wish it was still around. What did you think?
Yeah. This was very enjoyable, although I think it's mostly because it is unrelated to anything else going on in the X-Men at this time. And as you said, this is maybe an indication of this stretching out the storyline and delaying the X-Men getting back together and so forth. I suppose I could nitpick some of Jim Lee's art, to be honest. It looks great, but there are times where I think he goes for cool poses instead of believable storytelling. So, for example, when Wolverine frees Captain America and Ivan when they were tied up, right? Ivan just suddenly has a gun, right? They were tied up a second ago. How does he suddenly just have a gun once he's untied, right? Mm-hmm. Or when the attack on the boat happens, Psylocke goes from being in a party dress in one panel to her purple dental floss in the other. It's just, it looks cool, but that page right there, right? It looks cool, but there's no in between of, how does that change happen, right?
Yeah, doesn't it take a few seconds to get those stockings on? Like at least like the leg stuff, like you'd think that, you gotta like pull it over. I mean, I had some
wrap it around.
Yeah, I had some like leg surgery type things done, and I had to wear like compression stockings, and it took a good 30 seconds to get those leg stockings on. Like, how's she getting that on that quick?
Yeah. Now, maybe if they had some kind of panel where she was like psychically making everyone think that she's wearing a party dress and
Good
she actually has
explanation.
her assassin thing, that would be fine. But we
But
don't get
follow the
that.
rules. I got to
So
see pink butterflies if she's controlling people. So
right there you go. Um, I do want to know how they explain the time difference here. And I think you alluded to this a little bit, Stojer, but we know why Wolverine and Captain America are alive and kicking about in 1941, right? Captain America, that's definitely, he's frozen, gets awoken again in the modern era. Cool. Wolverine's practically immortal because of his healing factor. Um, but even Natasha is the problem, right? Even if Natasha was only 4 or 5 in 1941, that would put her in the mid 50s by this storyline, right? She'd be in her mid 50s. And at least that age is acknowledged by Jubilee's reaction, right? She says, wait, how is this young woman so old? But we get no explanation for why Natasha looks so young. And to your point, maybe that is because of the retconning of Black Widow's background, that this is experimentation in the Red Room or whatever. But even that, I wish they addressed it a bit more here.
yeah, I think in her storylines that she's got some version of the super soldier serum in her or something like that. There's like what's that version that Nick Fury takes? It's like the Infinity formula or something like that.
Oh, I don't even know.
That's it.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a serum. I mean, they've there's some weird retcon where they said that didn't even work with when there's the what was it, the sin not
Since
sins.
pass?
No, there's
No.
what is that called? Original Sin. There's that Original Sin crossover. And they retcon it. But I think yeah, Nick Fury takes some serum called the Infinity Formula, and that's how that's how he was able to be around in World War II and around now. They've changed that, but so I think she might have some version of that. I'm trying to Google it, but I'm not finding it as quickly as I want.
Yeah, that's fine. Stojer, do you know why this issue is so sought after by collectors? This seems like one of those floppy issues that people in the comic collecting subreddit are always touting of, look what I got, look what I got. Is it that this is like Jim Lee's first official issue of his run, even though he doesn't do the next issue, or do you know why?
What he does do the next issue. Isn't it? He's on.
Oh no, wait, no, it's the inker's different in the next issue. That's sorry.
So I look, I think it's Cap and Wolverine teaming up. I think it's establishing. Have we really told any stories of Wolverine in the past? Have we really established how old he is? Like, I don't. Like, we've alluded to it, but like, I don't. I'm racking my brain in the moment.
His book.
In his book, we're only maybe 25 issues in, 30 issues in, and I don't know that they did a lot of flashback stuff in the beginning of that book. So I know when you get to like halfway through the book, around issue 40 or 50, you get the what's her name, not Mariko, but the who's the one that Sabretooth kills in Canada, whatever her name is, the Fox, maybe Silver something. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know that there's been things in the past. You get a Captain America team up, you get amazing Jim Lee art cover to end. This is definitely Jim Lee's. I mean, the Acts of Vengeance stuff is on par with this, but I think this is more, people focus on it more, and it's like such a one and done storyline. Like, you don't have to work like with the Acts of Vengeance stuff. Like, why is Psylocke changed and all this sort of weirdness? This is like, you get this issue and you get everything you want in here. So I think it does have to do with the team up of things with Captain America and Wolverine, and the art.
All right. Well, let's get to our last issue for this episode. All right. So this is Uncanny X-Men number 269, Rogue Redux. Arts Tibbert fills in as the guest inker, and that's where I looked at my notes and thought, oh, Jim Lee's not drawing this one. No, he is. Different inker. Okay, Rogue finally comes out of the Siege Perilous and awakens in the Reaver's base, what used to be the X-Men's Outback headquarters, although she doesn't know that that's not the case anymore. But not only Rogue comes out, but Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel appears too, and she has a beef with Rogue. Well, Rogue manages to escape to the Savage Land via Gateway, and Danvers ends up on Muir Island where she succumbs to the control of the Shadow King. Danvers then flies to Antarctica to attack Rogue because the two of them share a life or a life force and cannot survive without the other. But Danvers has been corrupted, so she tries to steal Rogue's life force, and in the ensuing battle, Rogue is actually saved by Magneto. All right, Stojr, your thoughts here.
I just feel like this is just a fun issue to look at from an art perspective, but everything else in it is just a hot mess. So this is just, it like if the last issue was a great candy bar as a treat, this issue is like overly sugary, just too much candy, like without any real substance inside, right? Like this is just like, the pure cheap chocolate versus the last issue was like, at least you got maybe some Snickers mixed in and some peanuts or something, right? That because I don't know, like everything in this is just confusing for no reason, right? So this idea that like, that like this isn't Carol. Like this is like a copy of Carol from Rogue's brain. Like what? Like why do I care about this, right? Now what does do well in here is it sets up some future things, right? So we're getting a bit of a tease as to like the story moving forward on Muir Island and it going to something a lot deeper there. So that's good. We get a bit of a tease as to what's going to happen with the Shi'ar on the Muir Island saga and what's going to happen there, which I'm going to purposely not spoil and keep somewhat vague, right? So that's something good. But otherwise, I just I don't know what's going on in here. Like it's all over the place. Like why does Rogue look like she's black in this? Is it's supposed to be the lighting or something? Like what the colorists do here? Like I don't get it.
I think in that panel, yeah. I think it's the coloring, but
so like I feel like I don't know. Just I feel like this is just a bunch of eye candy. It's an excuse to sort of sexualize Rogue. And while they've done this a bit through the Outback era, this is the Rogue we're going to get throughout the rest of the 90s. Like Jim Lee, is setting the stage here, and we're going to get half-dressed Rogue, for this far out. And even this sort of relationship with Rogue and Magneto is something that we're going to see throughout the rest of the 90s all the way through Age of Apocalypse. So anyway, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this I was wondering when the start of Beefcake Rogue was going to begin, and this is it, right? She comes out of the Siege Perilous, and now we're just going to make her a supermodel whose superpower is squeezing into tight outfits, right? So I am at least glad that we're getting back to Rogue. I've been wondering, all these other guys went through the Siege Perilous, and we've seen all of them except for Rogue, who went first, and then Havoc, which honestly I forgot about Havoc until you mentioned him earlier in the episode, Stojr.
I mean, even Scott forgot about Havoc. Everybody forgets about Havoc.
Yeah. So at least we get her back. Lee's artwork is definitely what adds to this. If I could actually ask you to take the page back to page 14, comic view to page 14, that's the one that has the collage of Rogue standing, with the explorer pose, and there's some stuff, that one right there.
Mm-hmm.
What a great little collage there, right? Of Rogue in the Savage Land. Just everything there is epic. She's fighting a dinosaur. You've got that classic, the setting sun going behind her. Although I guess if we're in the Antarctic, maybe this is not setting at this time. It's just kind of hovering down there. But that is just a magnificent little panel there that I really appreciate. And I kind of get the life force thing that's going on between Rogue and Carol Danvers. I guess it makes sense if after the Siege Perilous they get to both be their own people, which I guess is their desire. But you pointed out this is not the real Carol Danvers, right? The real Carol Danvers is off doing something else. So this is a physical manifestation of her. And then her being killed by Magneto at the end of this issue maybe is how we finally resolve that struggle for control of Rogue's mind, right? Carol Danvers is officially out of the picture now because Magneto took care of her. And I'm fine with that. I thought it was an interesting idea, but one that we didn't need to stretch out any further. So we're done with that. Great. Let's move on.
Yeah, it would have been more interesting if if it was really her, but she's out there in space with the Starjammers, and actually in the Extinction Agenda Omni at the end, they do collect. There's a 2-issue Starjammers limited series by Cockrum, and I forget who. I think who might just be by Cockrum. I have to look at who the credits are, but he's definitely on art duties or involved in that. So she'll show up there as binary or whatever she is at that point in time. I also to correct a mistake or I made earlier, I mentioned that the colorist or I think it was the colorist that did some issues of X-Men in the adjectiveless X-Men after Jim Lee left. I actually was thinking about Art here. It's Art Thurber that I was thinking about, not the other person. So he does some issues after Jim Lee leaves. So I can tell, like, if you look at this issue compared to the last issue, you can tell Art's influence on this issue as compared to Jim on the last issue. Like that.
You mean Scott Williams?
Am I saying Art?
Scott Williams, the inker over Jim Lee?
Yeah, hold on. So who am I talking about here? So who's the
Art Tibbert's the inker on this one?
Yeah, I'm talking about Art. Yeah. No, what I'm saying is like, yeah. So I'm saying that the Art's inking in this issue makes it seem closer to the art when he's penciling and inking later versus the Jim Lee and who was the inker in the last issue?
Scott Williams.
Looks more like classic Jim Lee, right? So the last issue looks like Jim Lee, straight up, right? Like if I went and got like the Hush Batman, it's going to be in a similar vein as to what I just saw there in the last issue with Captain America. If I hold this issue up to like X-Men number 13 or something like that from the 90s, where Art does the pencils, this is going to look closer to Art doing the pencils, which is, closer to that version of Jim Lee. So,
and I think that does speak to the power of the inker, because I looked it up real quick. Scott Williams is the inker on Batman Hush.
Yeah,
Jim Lee's the penciler. So we're just accustomed to seeing Jim Lee's pencils inked by Scott Williams because they've worked in tandem for so long.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, how you can like lean one way or the other into a different style based off of the influence of that inker. So,
yep. Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember as comic enjoyers that, pencilers get a lot of the credit, but really most of what we're seeing is the inks. Mm-hmm. Pencilers set up the layout and can give a lot of the details, but mostly what we see is what the inker does.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other final thoughts for all these issues we've looked at, Stojr?
No, I think look these extra issues. I think the crossover was a little disappointing, but had great art in the last volume or last issue, and then these 2 issues have great art throughout them. In both of these issues, they definitely move the plot forward, at least in this one. We get rid of Captain Marvel persona. We get Magneto and Rogue in the Savage Land. We get hints of what's to come in a couple of different areas, and then we're about to move on into a full-on crossover in the next issue.
Yep. And I'm looking forward to where the X-Men are going to go, because they can only go up from here, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's talk about where we're going to go next. Yeah, I guess it is next week when this comes out. We're starting DC Finest Batman Year 1 and 2. We'll do the first half of that. That'll go up through Detective Comics. Oh, I'm trying to get my Detective Comics number 572, the Doomsday Book. So that'll be the first half that we're going to cover for next week, and then we'll wrap up the DC Finest Batman next week. And boy, is I guess a little hint of my impressions. This is a breath of fresh air after what we've just read with the X-Men.
Yeah, it's some solid stuff, and what'll be interesting to talk about with you is, I I don't know. Be your impressions of pre-crisis Batman versus post-crisis, because this book straddles the fence. So this is technically it's all post-crisis Batman, because I think the Red Sky, or no, it's all pre-crisis Batman because the Red Sky stuff. I forget exactly what. But
Red Sky's pre-crisis, but I don't know.
Yeah, but this is Red Skies before this?
Red Skies before this, and I only know this because of looking at the volumes that have come out. I've never read any of these actual books.
So Red Skies is before this. That's when Crisis happens. The first couple issues of this volume feel like pre-Crisis, and then that shifts very, very dramatically as we get into year one. So that's what I was trying to say. So it'll be interesting to kind of get some different perspectives on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely a newcomer to this DC stuff. I've read some Batman before, but after all this.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's what's going to be coming up next. We're going to have a bonus this month in honor of the brand new day Spider-Man movie coming out. We're going to drop the day after the movie comes out a review of the Amazing Spider-Man Brand New Day complete collection, the first volume. So we'll be covering that, and you'll get to hear all of our bickering that we've had about this time period. We've had hints here or there about our disagreements here. We'll actually get into some of that in this episode. And definitely tune in for that one for an important announcement, right? But we'll save that for that actual episode. Yep. And then next month, we are going to read the New Mutants Epic Collection Volume 8, The End of the Beginning, plus Uncanny X-Men number 273 to 277. So this will get us the Extinction Agenda as part of reading through Uncanny X-Men. And then we're going to have to add in about 5 issues there to add on to that to get the X-Men in. And then also in August, Excalibur Volume 1, The Sword is Drawn. All right, so that was the winner of the reading poll. That's the next thing that we'll cover. And I think that is it.
Oh, September.
Okay. I have the next X-Men one prepped already. So, okay, starting September, we'll get Volume 19, X-Men Epic Collection, Volume 19, Mutant Genesis.
Yeah,
and then
which is also
we don't have to do...
Some of this is also in the blue and gold Omni. So that is a horrible cover that they picked, in my opinion. This is where I'm not a fan for that cover. But this issue has what I've been talking about, the end of X Factor as we know it, the Muir Island saga, and then kicks off that blue and gold era with I think we get the 90s X-Men #1 in there. So this is the first time that we're going to get two main X-Men titles. Look.
Yeah. So that'll be exciting. That's definitely getting into the time period when I was reading as a kid. So, all right, that's it. We're finally past this low point that we've had in the X-Men, and hopefully things are going to improve from here.
All right, sir. All right. Looking forward to the next one. Talk to you soon.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Share with your friends. We want to grow these numbers, just because we enjoy doing this, and the more of you that are on board, the more fun it is for us, right? And hopefully, the more fun for you as well. Send us messages, leave comments, all of that stuff. We respond to everything.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for now. Take